If you've been waiting for the Pocono housing market to crash before buying a home, the July numbers may surprise you. Home prices in Monroe County are actually up more than 6% from last year, and closed sales jumped almost 11%. But here's where it gets interesting. New listings are down, pending sales are down, homes are taking longer to sell, and housing affordability is getting worse. So who's actually winning this market right now, buyers or sellers? The answer is, it depends on the house, the price, and your strategy. I'm bfoder, and in the next few minutes I'll break down what happened in the Monroe County and Pocono real estate market in July, and, more importantly, what these numbers actually mean if you're thinking about buying or selling. Let's start with the bigger picture. Nationally, existing home sales declined 2.4% from the previous month to an annualized pace of about 4.09 million homes. But compared with a year ago, sales were actually up 2.8%. And the Northeast was the one region where sales increased month over month. Prices aren't falling nationally either. The national median existing home price reached approximately $440,600, which was 1.8% higher than a year ago. That also marked the 36th consecutive month of year-over-year price increases, according to the report. National inventory stood at about 1.56 million homes, representing approximately 4.6 months of supply, and the typical home spent about 28 days on the market. So nationally, we're seeing a slower market than the frenzy of a few years ago, but we're not seeing the widespread price collapse some buyers have been waiting for. And that's important when we look at what's happening here in the Poconos. Let's start with inventory. In July, Monroe County had 898 homes for sale. That's only 0.9% lower than July of last year, when there were 906 homes available. And we currently have about 4.5 months of inventory, which is exactly where we were 1 year ago. But here's an important number sellers should pay attention to. Only 341 new listings came onto the market in July. That's down 7.1% from last year. And year to date, new listings are down 4.2%. In other words, we're not seeing a huge wave of new homes flooding the market. That limited supply is one of the reasons prices continue to hold up. Here's probably the most surprising number in this month's report. There were 236 closed sales in July. That's an increase of 10.8% compared with July 2025. Now, year to date, we're still slightly behind last year. There have been 1,288 closed sales through July, compared with 1,310 during the same period last year, a decline of only 1.7%. So despite everything you hear about interest rates and affordability, buyers are still purchasing homes. They're just being more selective. And we can see that in pending sales. There were 201 pending sales in July, down 7.4% from last year. Year to date, however, pending sales are almost flat, down just 0.5%. That's telling me demand hasn't disappeared. Buyers are there. They're simply not buying everything that hits the market. Now let's talk about what everybody wants to know. Are Pocono home prices falling? Based on this report, the answer is no. The Monroe County median sales price in July was $344,950. Last July, it was $325,000. That's an increase of 6.1% in 1 year. And when we look year to date, the price increase is even stronger. The year-to-date median sales price is approximately $336,790, up 8.6% from $310,000 last year. Average sales price tells a similar story. The average July sale was about $392,026, up 10.6% year over year. That doesn't mean every home appreciated 6%, 8%, or 10%. Median and average prices can change depending on the mix of homes being sold. But it does tell us something very important. There isn't evidence in this report of broad downward pressure on Monroe County home prices. This is where I think the market gets really interesting. Prices are up, closed sales are up, inventory isn't dramatically higher. That sounds like fantastic news for sellers. And it is. But look at days on market. The average property that sold in July took 47 days to receive an accepted offer compared with 42 days last July. That's an increase of 11.9%. And sellers received an average of about 96% of their original asking price. That's a very important number. It tells us buyers aren't blindly paying whatever sellers ask. There is still negotiation happening. So if you're a seller, this is not the market to say, my neighbor sold for $350,000, so let's list mine at $399,000 and see what happens. That strategy can become expensive. Because today's buyer can compare your home with everything else available almost instantly. If the condition, presentation, marketing, and pricing don't match the competition, they'll simply move on. If you're considering selling in the Poconos, I see three big takeaways. Number one, you still have leverage. Prices are higher than last year, inventory remains under 900 homes, and new listings declined. That's a good environment for a properly positioned property. Number two, pricing matters more than it did during the frenzy. The market isn't rewarding unrealistic pricing. The goal isn't to find the highest price you can put on Zillow or the MLS. The goal is to identify the price that causes buyers to say, we need to see this house. Because competition among buyers is what ultimately helps a seller maximize the sale price. Number three, your first impression matters. Professional photography, preparation, online presentation, video marketing, proper positioning, and launch strategy matters significantly when buyers are becoming more selective. The best homes can still move quickly, but the market is increasingly separating the homes that are positioned correctly from the ones that aren't. Buyers, there's good news for you too. You have something buyers didn't have much of several years ago: time and negotiating opportunity. With homes averaging 47 days before an accepted offer, you're not necessarily walking into a market where every house has 20 offers by Sunday night. And sellers receiving approximately 96% of original list price suggests there can be room for negotiation depending on the property. That negotiation might involve price, but it could also involve seller assistance, inspection repairs, closing dates, mortgage-related concessions, or other terms. However, don't confuse a slower market with a collapsing market, because the biggest challenge for buyers remains affordability. Monroe County's Housing Affordability Index dropped to 108, down 5.3% from last July. Year to date, affordability is down 7.6%. So waiting indefinitely for prices to collapse carries its own risk. Prices are currently moving in the opposite direction. The better question may be, can I comfortably afford the right house today? And can I structure the purchase in a way that makes financial sense for me? That's a very different question than trying to perfectly time the market. So what's the Pocono market doing? I would describe it as a market in transition. It's not the frantic seller's market we experienced a few years ago. But based on these July numbers, it's certainly not a buyer-dominated market where sellers are being forced to dramatically cut prices either. We have prices rising, closed sales increasing, fewer new listings, nearly unchanged inventory, longer marketing times, more selective buyers, and affordability becoming more challenging. That's why strategy is becoming much more important than simply asking, is this a buyer's market or a seller's market? Because the answer can literally change from one neighborhood, price range, and property type to another. If you're thinking about selling a home anywhere in Monroe County or the Pocono Mountains, and you'd like to know what your specific home could realistically sell for in today's market, reach out to me. And if you're thinking about buying, I can help you identify where buyers may have negotiating leverage and where you may still face competition. Comment market below, send me a message, or contact me directly, and I'll be happy to put together the numbers for your specific situation. And if you want these Pocono market updates each month, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm bfoder. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next market update.